Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan. It's a Friday game preview Inside the Birds podcast. We have a huge game here to break down. The Eagles going out west to take on the Seattle Seahawks of the NFC West, going to Seattle, a place they haven't won in a long, long time. But this is not, I repeat, not the Seattle Seahawks team that you're used to seeing, that you've seen for a while under Pete Carroll. And I can't wait to break this game down here in this podcast, Adam. And obviously, because of it's a Monday night game, the Eagles didn't even get onto the practice field until Thursday, until yesterday, of course. So what that means for us is most likely on Monday, I think we'll probably have another quick podcast out just to go through any last minute injuries or changes, any intel that we get along the way. But we can still break this game down here in this podcast. And then, of course, again on Monday night, starting at 5 o'clock, 5 to 7, you, me, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant, and we will really do a great job on the Inside the Birds pregame live show, which I'm really excited about. And just to set the table here about this podcast, I have been sort of trying to rack my brain about who the Seattle Seahawks are. And, everybody in the city right now is wondering who the Eagles are after 2 losses. But if you go through the Seattle Seahawks rankings and their schedule, it's almost really difficult. They don't have a whole lot of quality wins. They've lost 4 straight games, but people seem to be impressed by their loss against Dallas. They've had to play San Francisco twice the last 4 weeks, which are very difficult. So, they obviously had Geno Smith, their quarterback, out last week. So this is just a very difficult team this year to really, to me, encapsulate and figure out what it is.
Well, the good thing for the Eagles is they're not facing Russell Wilson, who was the guy who would just destroy them. I mean, it was humiliating, some of the things that he was able to accomplish, because this is when he was elite and the NFL's best downfield thrower. He beat them so many times. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Right.
A lot has changed here, which we're going to get into today. We have some very, very interesting numbers and information that we've got for you for the show today. Can't wait to get into it. But a lot of things have changed here with Seattle. In fact, they're playing more 11 personnel than they have in years past, because they have Jackson Smith and Jigba to account for that, who was drafted to eventually take Tyler Lockett's job. Mm-hmm. But Lockett's still starting this season. That's not in question. But a lot has changed here, man. Yeah, you're right. Look, I'm sure the front office, John Schneider and Pete Carroll, I'm sure they're disappointed in the team's record, but because they're in the NFC, they're still weighing it for one of the wild card spots, and the urgency, as you include the Eagles in there, is clear here. Both teams are going to badly want to win this game.
Yeah. Now, you talked about a lot of things changed. What the Eagles need to change to get back on track, Adam, is their success against the Seahawks, as you mentioned, most of it with Russell Wilson, but they have lost 6 straight regular season games to the Seahawks, 7 if you count the playoffs. As most people will remember, they played it was Carson Wentz's 3rd year, right? They played the Seahawks in the regular season, and then the playoffs, obviously, he got knocked out by Jadeveon Clowney, and they lost both games by the same exact score. It was like something like 13-9, something ridiculous like that. They have not won, Adam, in Seattle in 15 years, which is crazy to me because I was there the last time they won in Seattle. I was covering the team as a beat reporter. So I remember the game well. I believe Brent Selleck had a 100-yard effort in that game.
Wow.
So yeah, 15 years, a long time. It feels to me like I can remember. I remember going to the Space Needle. I remember hanging out with some of the reporters, Tim McManus, Andy Schwartz. That doesn't feel like it was 15 years ago. I guess I'm just getting old.
Well, a couple things here. So both scores were 17-9. You're right. They were very odd. And if you recall, we talked to Mike Pereira, the former NFL director of officials. What did we talk to him at the Super Bowl? Or did I talk to him?
Yeah, we had him on in our Radio Row interview, I believe.
Well, but the bottom line was...
No, you're right. This was years ago. You were at Radio Row.
Yeah, yes, it was because of that cheap shot. Yeah, because it was clear to me that was a cheap shot by Clowney, and he agreed with me. Mm-hmm. Said absolutely she was a personal foul and should have been called as such. But nevertheless, yeah, it was 17-9. And look, you're an Eagle fans remember this, the awful Vince Young game on a Thursday night, Eagles quarterback, and then Vince Young, 2011. Yeah. It was an awful game. In fact, remember Joe Banner telling us that was one of the many reasons why he thought it was so ridiculous that the league made them fly on a short week. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty certain that was the case for the Eagles then. In fact, I will find that. Yes, it was Thursday night. They got blown out 31-14. Let me just make, I know it had to be Vince Young. It was, yes. Vince Young threw 4 picks.
Was
And the
that the
late,
game where Lofa Tatupu had 3 of the picks? Or no, that would be way before Vince Young. I'm sorry. I remember all the way back to Lofa Tatupu having 3 interceptions against AJ
Lofa,
Feely. It
yeah,
was AJ
Lofa I
Feely.
met. What's that?
It was a game I think AJ Feely had to
Okay.
play where Lofa
Oh,
picked him off 3 times.
here are the picks. Hill, I don't remember if he was a defensive lineman or not. Let's see who got. Oh, no, it's David Hawthorne. I remember who was a linebacker. Cam Chancellor. Oh my goodness gracious, Brandon Browner had 2 off
Mm-hmm.
corner.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is that was an ugly game. But again, the key here is, and Tavares Jackson, the late Tavares Jackson was the starter there for Seattle. But for the Eagles now, they don't have to face Russell Wilson. But the thing is, though, you wonder about how much juice they have for this game. And now they've been humiliated, as you said, really. They lost 2 losses. Fans are all over them.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is they get a chance at redemption here against a defense that has been very up and down for Seattle. We'll get into the matchups in a second here, but it's a super winnable game. Last real road trip. After this, the Eagles take a bus to MetLife Stadium when they play the Giants, but that's it. So this is the last one, and I was wrong last week. I thought the Eagles would bounce back, and they didn't. We'll talk about going to the well here. We'll see. We'll see what we pick here. Now, in our game picks, if you like, what are our records? I forget.
I purposely don't remember because mine are terrible. I think you guys are well ahead of me because I took some risks that never came through. But I think I'm like 11-5. But I think you're the leader of the pack. I think you only have three wrong. Maybe Greg. I'll have to check. But yeah, it's definitely a 3-horse race now. I'm out of it. All right, so we got a lot to break down. Yeah, we got a lot to break down. We're going to go through the matchups in a second. We'll get to the injuries. First, I want to remind everybody Inside the Birds is brought to you, of course, by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Let's hear a word from them now.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Okay. Good friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Great place. Let's talk before we get into the matchups, of course, about some of the injuries. Now, the interesting thing is that the Eagles resumed practice yesterday on Thursday. They got the Wednesday off. Wednesday's normally a walkthrough day. Nick Sirianni must have felt because it's an off day that they've got plenty of rest, because on Thursday's practice, yesterday's practice, which is the day that they would have their walkthrough because it's like a Wednesday, they were out on the practice field anyway. So the reporters were there, was open to practice. So they treated Thursday like a Thursday, not like a Wednesday for a Sunday game. So they must have, Nick Sirianni either must have felt A, they needed the work, or B, they had enough rest having that extra Wednesday off. So injury, I think the good news from the injury report, I think, we never know. We always try to sort of just go on our experience as reporters, is that Reed Blankenship was limited at practice. That shows that he has reached the stage of concussion protocol where you're supposed to get out on the field. Now, how he responds to that today and the next day are critical. He could have a setback, he could not feel good, and that negates everything. But at least we know he's at least at that part. Given our conversation, right, Adam, last podcast about safety depth here, this would seemingly be an encouraging sign.
It is. And by the way, the original schedule that the Eagles sent out was to be a walkthrough on Thursday. People should know that.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, Sirianni, it's his call. He can do whatever he wants. He changed his mind.
Yep.
So I find that to be interesting. And because look, because the game is on Monday night, you practice Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So what you have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off, obviously you get treatment and having meetings, but you're not starting the practice week. You're starting one day later. So maybe he thought after all, that the players didn't need to have a jog through on Thursday and had a normal practice. So that was interesting. Not that they're grueling or anything, but nevertheless, they had a practice instead of a walkthrough. So it's worth noting. So
Right.
the now there are a couple new injuries,
Yeah.
and we got to look at this now. Slade's still on it with the knee. He's had this before, but the ones that are new are Zach Cunningham
Mm-hmm.
with a knee. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is new, and the other one is Cam Jurgens with pectoral.
Yep.
So we'll have to see with that. And Blankenship, as you said, was limited. But the ones we're going to be tracking heavily leading up to our next show on Monday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern are Cunningham and Jurgens. And Cunningham just got back from an injury where he missed a game. And then obviously Jurgens is big because he missed time earlier this season. We've detailed the injuries he had in college. So, you worry about this stuff where a guy eventually is going to be most likely, never know for sure, based on what
Mm-hmm.
happened with Lane Johnson, Jason Peters, when Lane was drafted to be Peters' replacement. And then, as we know, it never happened because he became the right tackle. So is Jurgens going to be the long-term solution for Kelsey? We'll have to see. He was drafted to be that, but you never know. But the bottom line is moving this along. We got to keep an eye here on Jurgens with pectoral injury.
Yeah, I think that this is really good because it invites a conversation for us after the year. I remember we talked about last year and how healthy they were for the year and even the year before, and talked about the changes that they made in their training and their athletic department, how they train and how it seemed to have worked there. But we also acknowledge that it was a small sample size. And now you add an extra year and they're done everything the same, but certainly have way more soft tissue injuries this year. So it's a conversation to have in the offseason. Has it been that they were lucky, or is it just unlucky this year? I don't know. We'll see. But they've clearly have way more injuries this year than they've had the year before, and then it's impacted how they've been as a team and their depth.
Yeah.
So we'll see about Jurgens. So as the week presents, and this is why Monday's pod will be important for updates on guys like Cunningham and Jurgens. And Slay has been on with the knee, and he just seems to be able to play. But we'll have to see if he can continue to kind of fight through whatever he's got going on.
Yeah. He missed a game earlier this season. We should note that. And for the Seahawks, if you want to do them real quick. So the big one is Geno Smith, who did work out before last week's game, but he was failing it. So they decided to hold him out. They're more optimistic this week. Drew Lock would start if he can't go like he did last week. Defensively, Trey Brown, who's their third corner, because when they go to nickel, Witherspoon goes inside. He had a heel injury. He's got to be able to plant that injured foot and move on it. They're still working through it. Witherspoon, my understanding is they do expect him to play with the bruised ribs, barring some kind of setback. So we'll update that on Monday morning. And now the couple injuries of note on injury reserve and why they've had some offensive line changes. Phil Haynes is the right guard, is on IR with a toe injury. A rookie, Anthony Bradford, starts for him. He's a fourth round out of LSU, and arguably the best pass rusher. Uchenna Nwosu's out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle. That was huge. He's really good and got an offseason contract extension. What they've done is they've moved Draymond Jones as stand-up pass rusher in his place. Jones, who we talked about in free agency, who we all loved, but he hasn't been the pass rusher they thought they were having, that they were getting, paying him all that money, but now they're standing him up. And that's kind of how they're doing it. And Boy Maffe's on the other side, but it's been a little bit of a struggle for them. Their defense has been very inconsistent. They're very loaded in the secondary, which we'll talk about in this show today with the matchups, but they've got some injury issues to get through for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Let's talk about the matchup here. Let's first discuss this Eagles offense, which, turned the ball over and has turned the ball over so much this year against this Seahawks defense. Now, we mentioned that this is not your father's Seahawks, or this is not your early Pete Carroll Seahawks, but that's more offensively. Defensively, the Seahawks have always been a heavy zone team. It used to be the cover 3 back in the Dan Quinn days. It's not Dan Quinn anymore, but they still play a ton of zone, maybe the most zone in the league at 87%.
Top two. So a couple things though. The big change they made 2 years ago is they went to a 34 front. They jumped to 43. Now they were playing an over front before that, which has elements of a 34, but now they are 34, 87% zone, which is, they've been a zone, as you said, heavy forever, seemingly under Pete Carroll since 2010, but very little man defense. Yes, within that, there's zone principles, but bottom line is you kind of know what you're getting with his own defense. They don't really hide it. So that's interesting. Now, one of the numbers, some of the numbers that we wanted to give you today that are new, because people are talking about run pass ratio. So, courtesy of our friends at Fantasy Points Data, who I absolutely love, and Brett Whitefield and his group, these are great numbers here. Because we talked about this years ago, that the Eagles pass run ratio, I think it was 64% in the Super Bowl year in 2017. The analytically driven teams believe in passing early and running late. Most do, not all of them do, but most do. That's just the way that Bill Walsh did it. It's Jimmy Johnson, by the way, even having Emmitt Smith, he believed in that. I couldn't believe when I heard Bill Cowher talked about it. Of all people who's missed a run, he was on Ben Roethlisberger's podcast over the summer and talked about, you always throw early, then run late. And I'm like, what? I love to check those numbers because I find it hard to believe that Bill is saying that, but okay. So the Eagles are about 62.7 pass in the first half, 37.7 run, which is only 11th, by the way, in passing in the first half. And we'll get to Seattle later. So for the people who want the Eagles to run more, the oddness of it, Geoff, is they ran the ball a little bit more than you would expect when they were down big, 24-6. They were still running it last week. Well, that was surprising.
You know what I think will make the people happy, Adam? Because if they just do this, then everything will take care of itself as far as run pass ratio. It's not turning the ball over. I think if the Eagles function offensively, crisp and cleanly like they do when they move the ball again against Dallas very well. They averaged 6.2 yards per play. That was more than Dallas averaged. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was turning the ball over. Yeah, of course, there were a couple of third downs they did not convert. But again, that was especially later in the game when you're already down by a lot and you're more one-dimensional. The Eagles just got to protect the football. And at this point, it's not just like one guy. Yes, Jalen Hurts has his share of turnovers, but when A.J. Brown turns the ball over, Devontae Smith turns the ball over, you just look at yourself and say, well, these are your playmakers. You got to hold on to the ball. This is a Seattle defense that not only plays a lot of zone, which I think will help the Eagles, but it's not playing very well. There are some games, even against Dallas, right, where they've given up a lot of points. They rank 27th in points allowed in the league. That's not very good. 28th in yards. So this is a really good opportunity for the Eagles to not worry about any ratio. Run your plays, do what you do, take advantage of your matchups, which I believe will be in their passing game, to be honest. I know everybody wants the Eagles to get back to the run. I'm sure they will incorporate it, but especially if they're, as you mentioned, going to play Witherspoon in the slot like they have, I feel like that's a waste of his talent because the Eagles aren't really stressing anybody from the slot position right now. But if that means Devontae Smith is matched up against, was it Trey Boston, right?
Trey Boston was the safety. Yeah, it's Trey Brown. Trey Brown. Oh, but now again, Witherspoon, just so you know, it starts on the outside, and then when they go into nickel, he goes inside.
Right, but the Eagles are constantly in 11. So if the Eagles are in 11, he's going to move inside.
You would think, but man, I'm just interested to see how, because Quez Watkins didn't even get a target last week. Now, were they playing more 11? You have to ask yourself this question: were they playing more 11 because they were well behind? Now, he did play 47% of the snaps last week, and Zacchaeus took some of those reps as well. It's interesting. Well, because you only have the one game sample with Goddard back, so we always have to consider that.
Right. And obviously the key to the success will be blocking it up. The Eagles have had some issues blocking it up against San Francisco, had some issues blocking it up against Dallas. But I think you made a great point when you were talking about this Seattle pass rush. It's not very good. It's a paper tiger because you look at names, right? You see Draymond Jones, their big signing. They give him a lot of money from Denver. Good player. Well, they're kind of, I don't want to say they're playing him out of position, but he's a stand-up rusher now. I don't think he did that. He was more of a down lineman with the Broncos. Okay. He's not having a great year. Boye Mafe was, I believe, a second-round pick of them out of Minnesota. He had some really great pre-draft analytics and testing, and he was good at Minnesota, but I think the Eagles can handle him, and Leonard Williams is playing well. I'll give him that. They traded for Leonard Williams. He's doing well on the inside, but the Eagles are very familiar with Leonard Williams, and they faced him before. And Jaron Reed, is a good play. Again, individually, all those names are recognizable names, but again, Seattle's defense has not been very good this year.
No, and I mean Jones is still playing with his hand down too, but they're using
Right.
him now as a stand-up pass rusher as well. But bottom line is this is a beatable defense. And John Reed had a fountain of youth, by the way. He's kind of like Hargrave. He's like a pass rusher for hire.
Mm-hmm.
Who started his career as a second-round pick in 2016 with the Seahawks and bounced around a little bit with Seattle, Kansas City, Green Bay, and back with Seattle. But overall, yeah, they're a beatable defense. Treek Woolen was benched some weeks ago briefly, and then he was back starting. They have depth at corner, but it's just not. It's just for whatever reason they can't get to the quarterback like they'd like to. And you're right, the plays are there to be made. You know what they're going to do, and the Eagles move the ball, as you said last week. But man, the turnovers are they're not only drive killers, they're game killers. And it's not like they didn't know that Dan Quinn teaches to take the ball, to punch the football. That's not a secret. He's done it everywhere he's been.
Right.
So
Right.
that's not an excuse. That's not a legitimate excuse. They know exactly what was coming. They just didn't protect the ball well enough. That's a really bad excuse for people trying to make it for him. That's unacceptable. You know what's coming. And I get what Sirianni said. It is tough, but I'm sorry. You got to protect the football. Any chance they had to stay in the game was done with those turnovers, as you said.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how much they move around their linemen. I know that Mafe tends to line up over the right tackle. So he has 7 sacks. He leads the team. So that'll be a Lane Johnson assignment for quite a bit, unless they move him around. Draymond Jones, we mentioned, he'll line up over Mailata. That might give you that's probably a matchup to watch because Mailata's been up and down this year. I think the Eagles' interior offensive line has blocked fairly well. So while Leonard Williams is and you mentioned Jaron Reed, those guys can be difficult matchups at time. I don't see a scenario where Jalen Hurts is under a tremendous amount of pressure or duress unless the Eagles offensive line just doesn't bring it. For me, the key will be, can they get Jalen Hurts involved with some of those isolation runs that he has up the middle? Because Seattle's linebackers are pretty good. Bobby Wagner, very, very smart. He's been in the league for a long time. He knows where to be. And Jordan Brooks is fast and quick. I mean, one of those guys who tested well athletically, I believe, and was a first-round pick, I think. Yep. Yeah. So that's a key for the Eagles to look at.
He's a stud. He's a flash player. Wagner is amazing. He's got this fountain of youth. He's a second-round pick for Seattle in 2012. We went to the Rams, and now he's back. They have Devin Bush. It's kind of funny. He fell off completely. But the stand-up guys that they're going to have pass rusher, Mafe, Taylor, a little bit of Reed when they move him around, but he's more of a down lineman. But they'll do a bunch of things with him to help their pass rush. Darryl Taylor is a guy who's in the final year of his rookie deal, who's not lived up to being a second-round pick. He's shown flashes. You'll see Derek Hall a little bit. It was a second-rounder this season. They have the players, and he's playing. I remember his dad is Mario Edwards Jr., who's been around forever, 2015, and he's been with a lot of teams, and he used to be a DN. He plays more inside, but they have the linemen, as you said. They just don't get home enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can read some of these names, even at linebacker, Wagner and Brooks and Devin Witherspoon, top 5 pick who's played well, and think that this should be a really good Seattle defense. But I can give you all the rankings in the world, and none of them are higher than 20, right? They are against the run, 23rd in yards, 29th in rushing touchdowns allowed, 24th in yards per carry allowed. So they're obviously not a very good rushing defense. Passing defense, 26th in attempts, 25th in yards allowed, 23rd in touchdowns allowed. So, I mean, there's nothing that, and again, 27th and 28th in points and yards. That to me tells me that the Eagles, as long as they're protecting the ball and as long as they're protecting Jalen Hurts, should not have a problem scoring points.
They give up space, they because of his contract. They've got just a couple of things here. With Jamal Adams, they got to play him. And he's a box safety. He's basically a linebacker for them.
Yep. You
go after him. If they have him line up on a tight end, or in this case, Goddard, you go after him. He doesn't cover very well. That transaction has just not worked out. He had a very bad knee injury, a quadriceps injury a couple of years ago, and that didn't help. But you're going to go after him. Quandre Diggs is a really good player, number 6, wearing quarterback number. But as you said, they have the names. And Leonard Williams is still playing very good football. That's been a good trade for them. But you put their 11 together, they just don't have any games where, oh my gosh, they shut them down. Now, the first game against the Niners in Seattle, they did a good job. They hung in there. But last week, they didn't play very well. McCaffrey crushed them. The first carry of the game, he had a 72-yarder, which was beautiful, great cutback. So you said it. The plays are there to be made. There's no reason why they can't move the football. Not only did the Eagles move it decently last week, which was an improvement over the Seattle game, over the Niners game, they're giving you the ability to move it, and it's right there for the take.
All right. All right. Last thing I'll say about their defense before we move on. I see 8 games out of their 13 where they've allowed 25 or more points this year. 8. Yeah, including a 41 to Dallas, a 37 to Baltimore, a 31 to Detroit, 31 to San Francisco, 30 to the Rams. This team, again, the Panthers scored 27 against them. So, I mean, like, again, this team you can score points on. The biggest battle, I think, will be obviously the crowd noise, which is always big in Seattle, and just the traveling and the silent count and all that. So we'll see what happens with Cam Jurgens. Let's move on to the matchup of the Eagles defense against this Seahawks offense that we said is a little bit different than it's been in the past. First, I got to tell everybody, as we've been saying, do you know what really sucks? Losing sucks. Watching your favorite team lose sucks. What sucks worse? Trying to find tickets online. And that's why you need Game Time. It's the fast, easy way to buy tickets for sporting events, concerts, and theater shows near you. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And right now on the Game Time app, you're just 2 taps away from tickets to the Birds, Sixers, Flyers, and more. The best part is Game Time offers event cancellation protection and even job loss protection. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Their all-in prices show you the total up front, and you can see the view from your seat. You know exactly what to expect when you get to checkout. Game Time is obsessed with helping you save money. They've got zone deals that let you pick the section while Game Time picks the seats for the best savings, and their Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less money, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redeem code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Adam, let's talk now about this Eagles defense against the Seahawks offense, because this is an offense that, as you mentioned, is different. They're passing the ball a lot more, and I'm sure they're looking at the Eagles tape right now and saying, "Hey, we can make some yards here. We got DK Metcalf, we got Lockett. We can probably stretch the field against an Eagles secondary that has not been holding up, and a pass rush, Adam, that's really not getting home."
It's a little bit odd that the pass rush has not gotten home, as you said. Now, if you look at it, though, Seattle doesn't have a Seattle does. They're very average on the offensive line. Smith. I mean, I give the guy. What did he hang in there? He played great 2 weeks ago on that Dallas game. It was awesome. He got knocked around and hit and just did a great job. Now, if he plays, I'm sure the Eagles want to test his movement with that groin injury. But look, it's Metcalf. They know. Slay had that one game where Metcalf got him a little bit. Lockett's so good. He's so underrated. Older player, major cap number next year, so they're gonna have a decision to make on him, and that's why they drafted Smith and Jigba to down the line. It could be as early as next year to replace him. Charles Cross is okay, a first rounder last year. Abe Lucas is back from his injury. I mentioned Bradford, the rookie from LSU, starting at right guard. Evan Brown, sort of a journeyman center, came over from Detroit, starting full time now for Seattle. Damian Lewis is the left guard I know they're very high on, who's in the final year of his rookie deal. And old friend Jason Peters, you might remember him, who I guess could play guard for them if they ever needed, but he's been playing more left tackle when needed. So that's it. I mean, you look at it, right? I give Geno Smith all the credit in the world. The big thing for him is this. First 9 years of his career and why he was a journeyman backup, indecisive, would hold on the ball, not sure what to do. Feet would get stuck. that stop last year out of the blue. He was super aggressive. And against Dallas 2 weeks ago, it was one of these, oh my goodness gracious, he's unstoppable kind of games. It was really awesome. That was one of his best games.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is amazing also that Jason Peters is still playing. So God bless him, man.
Crazy.
He keeps going on and he can play when he gets in, he plays all right. It's really a sight to see. I guess if I am, a really sarcastic, cynical guy, Adam, and I see that the Seahawks are passing at a 64% clip in the first half, which puts them in the top 10. I got to say, Pete Carroll is letting Geno cook.
Okay. So when did this start? By the way, they're passing more than the Eagles are in the first half. How about that number?
Crazy.
If that doesn't surprise anyone, you must be sleeping, because that's not Pete Carroll's reputation. But here's what happens. So the front office for years wanted Pete to do this. And then Brian Schottenheimer in 2020 and the front office went to him. Pete gave in. Wilson had 28 passing touchdowns in the first 8 games. He was headed for an NFL record. 2 things happened in the second half of that season. Teams had enough of that. They're playing more cover 3 against them. They were like, you're not throwing over heads anymore. And Pete, the defense was bad that season. Pete had enough. So it was a little bit of a clash between Schotty and Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll and Schotty parted ways after the 2020 season. They had philosophical differences. Gee, I wonder what those were.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's doing a good job. By the way, the Cowboys with Dak Prescott, do you think they're super aggressive?
Yeah, with Shoddy as the OC. Yep, they're throwing the ball.
Yeah, he's
all
not
over
calling
the
the plays. But McCarthy would always get criticized for being too conservative, right?
Yep.
They're pretty conservative. They're the anti-conservative team. Look at Dak right now, how well he's playing.
Yes. Yeah. They're flinging it, man, in a way that we're not accustomed to seeing Dallas play. And that's, not to get hung up on Dallas, but they're not even getting as much out of Pollard as I think we all thought they would get going into the year. He's just not as explosive, but they're all right with that. They'll go empty and they'll just throw the ball around as they did against the Eagles and make hay. I do think that I am concerned in this matchup. Obviously, this is not breaking news, but by more so what Jackson Smith-Njigba and Tyler Lockett can do. Those are good route runners, technicians. And if Geno has the opportunity to throw the ball, if he has time, I worry about that. Whoever is going to be lining up against Roby in the slot. And I'll be very interested to see if they're going to continue playing Keely Ringo on the outside. He did not have some great snaps there against the Cowboys, and it doesn't get any easier whether it's Tyler Lockett or whether it's DK Metcalf.
Yeah, Lockett is so good. By the way, he can't. I know they use Metcalf on a lot of 9 routes and post routes, but particularly 9 routes downfield. But Lockett could still run. He's made plays over his career downfield. Eagles know this player very well. And Smith-Njigba, every once in a while, they take a shot play to him. He is, the knock on him was the hamstring problems, and some teams are wary of it. Some teams did not give him a first-round grade, though. If you talk to receiver coaches, probably the top-graded guy. Some teams had issues with it. They were concerned about it, but so far so good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're playing more 11 personnel. They've been so heavy with Pete Carroll with 12 personnel, some 13, but this year they've made a break from it as much because they have the aforementioned Smith-Njigba. But when they go 12, it's Will Dissly,
Mm-hmm.
who was drafted to block, though his rookie season he kind of shocked them before he had a bad knee injury. He was actually doing pretty well as a pass catcher. Noah Fant is their move guy, and Parkinson is a tall tight end. He's a run after the catch guy. So you can't sleep on those guys. That's the big thing there. And of course, the backfield is split between Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. Walker's the explosive guy, their lead back. Now, the way they look at it is if their closer, if they get a lead in the fourth quarter, Charbonnet is going to be that guy. Unfortunately, they haven't had a lot of leads, so they haven't been able to do that.
You wonder if the Seahawks tactically will notice that against Dallas, the Eagles were very rarely in their 5-man front. They were mostly in a 4-man front. Okay. Because obviously they were probably they were a little hurt at linebacker, so you're trying to help that second level out. And B, Dallas throws the ball a lot, so you want to be in more of a nickel look, right? Rushing the passer. So you wonder if Seattle will try to get the Eagles to be in more 4-man fronts by putting more receivers out, playing a lot of 11 personnel, right? And then trying to run out of your 11 because you're not running against a 5-man front. Now the Eagles were able to circumvent that a little bit by at least walking a linebacker down to the line of scrimmage, like Zach Cunningham, to be a 5 if they thought Dallas was going to run. But I just wonder about the sort of cat and mouse there, because the Eagles are pretty tough to run against when they're in a 5-man front, and Seattle has 2 good running backs. So does Seattle try to get the Eagles in a 4-man front and still run from those formations? That to me is a question of just scheme and tacticality, if that's a word.
Well, yeah, tacticality. I like it. So here's the thing, though. If you look at the numbers, right, the Eagles have given up the most pass completions in the National Football League. They've given and teams are completing about 61% against them, which is the worst in the National Football League.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's coming. I know Pete Carroll, people call him a run game guy, but you know it based on the numbers. Seahawks 9th in pass attempts in the first half. They're 63-7 pass, 36-3 run. You've got Smith and Jigba now. That's a big part of it. If I'm Pete Carroll and that staff, and Shane Waldron's done a really good job, I'm going to be super aggressive. I'm going after the secondary. Why wouldn't you?
Well,
until they stop you.
I get that, but I do think that there might be a little bit of arrogance in that, because what they don't have compared to what San Francisco had in their offensive framework and what Dallas has in personnel is a good offensive line. And I do think that there's a little bit of you got a sleeping giant here, or you have an Eagles pass rush that is not getting home. You're going to sit there and throw the ball 10 times on your first 12 and then risk Josh Sweat, just, a pissed off Josh Sweat, if you've heard his comments, by the way.
I don't think coaches look at it that way unless they're having trouble with protection. Coaches typically don't look at it that way.
I thought that Geno was among the most sacked quarterbacks in the league, if I'm not mistaken.
But that hasn't stopped them. But that didn't stop them. He was awesome. No, you're right. He's getting sacked.
Maybe that's why they're a losing team.
That doesn't stop them. They kept throwing. Now, I know they were behind. Watching that Dallas game, I'm like, I can't believe the beating he's taking.
Yeah.
And there's, again, that if you look at the numbers, they're nearly 64% in the first half. They don't seem to care. They're not like Andy Reid wouldn't do it. Didn't matter what his offensive line looked like. He's like, we're throwing. We're not going to protect you. Remember the Winston Justice game? He refused to help them.
Mm-hmm.
They go to, but unless Pete Carroll micromanages it, which he has in the past years ago, if you let Waldron call it, they're coming out throwing. And again, why wouldn't you? You don't go in thinking you can't protect. Now, to your point, if they come out throwing and they can't protect, they're loaded at tight end. Oh, you know who's on the? He doesn't really play, but you know who's on their team? Brady Russell.
Brady Russell, blocking tight end.
Mentioned it again.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. He's the nephew of Matt Russell, the Eagles senior.
That's right. Sign off the Eagles practice squad. Yep.
Right. He was with the Eagles in camp and on the practice squad. Shaq Leonard. Let's finish off the defense with this. He played 13 snaps. Was used a little bit as a blitzer, which is an easy way to throw a guy into a game in his first game of the team. Think we'll see some more Shaq Leonard this week, you think?
So, he got out to, definitely so. I mean, I'd be surprised if he didn't double it or play more. And the other thing is, why can't he blitz?
Well,
I know the Eagles are terrible at blitzing, but why not try something? This thing now, we shouldn't mention before we get out of here, it is expected to rain. It's expected to rain. Now, again, we're only Friday morning here. Forecasts can change, ease up a little bit here. And so, by the way, you can throw in the rain. Boy, did we learn in that Buffalo Eagles game. My goodness gracious, there's over 70 points scored. So you can throw in the rain.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll have to see what happens. But we'll update that on Monday morning. But that's always interesting.
I mean, it's Seattle. It always rains in Seattle. But I don't think it gets very windy and blustery there. It's usually just kind of a rain, like you said, that you can manage. And by the way, the Eagles have a lot of experience with that, so they should be just fine. They won the last 2 games they won were in the rain. So I mean, maybe they welcome that.
One thing, I love snow games. I don't know about you. It's just something romantic, as they say.
Yes,
I like snow games. You were there, you covered it. The Lions-Eagles game where the snow came out of nowhere, was never on the radar. I mean, that to me was the most fun that I've ever had going to a game, because no one was prepared for it.
Yep.
I'd just rather it snow than rain, to be honest. I can't stand rain games.
It would be nice to see another a snow game at the link sometime soon. That would be pretty cool.
Yep.
Especially if it was the playoffs. That would be fun too. All right, let's get into our prediction for this game. And again, we'll get some last minute updates in on Monday. But prediction for the game before we get to that. As we've been telling you, it's almost wintertime. It gets dark so soon. Everyone's out right now, right? Like literally right this second. It doesn't even matter what time you're listening to this because there's like a billion people outside getting holiday shopping done. Nobody has time to sit down and plan and make a meal. That's why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There's no wasting time at the grocery store because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. With HelloFresh, the shopping is already done. The perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. It doesn't get more efficient than that. Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. Don't forget about taste and selection. Shrimp, steak, chicken, turkey, vegetarian meals, anything. If you want it, they got it. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles. Use the promo code 50Eagles, 50 Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles. Use the promo code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right. I have not looked in the last 10 minutes at the spread and total. So you give me 1 second and I will find that courtesy of our friends at MyBookie. What would you think if you hadn't looked? What would you think that the total or the spread would be on this?
I haven't seen it. I would put the Eagles as again, I haven't seen it, so I could be way off. I'd make the Eagles a 2.5-point favorite, and
Okay.
I'd put the over-under at like 48.
Yeah, I think I probably would have done 3.5, but I like that 48. I might even go to 50 the way these teams have been throwing it around a little bit lately. But according to our friends at mybookie.ag, the Eagles are 3.5-point favorite. I didn't look either. I got it. 3.5-point favorites. A little lower on the over under 47.5. So
I had it 48. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, no, yeah, you actually nailed that. So yeah, Eagles favored on the road. This is the first time the Eagles have been favored, by the way, since the Buffalo Bills game. So how about that? 2 straight weeks of being the underdogs.
It's gonna be a fun game. I really do. I think it's gonna be a fun game.
All right, tell me what you think.
I've got it Eagles 30, the fake birds 27. I say it because there's no such thing as a Seahawk. Anyway.
Seahawks.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, 30-27. So you Adam, I'm gonna start calling you Mr. Over because lately you are on the over bandwagon.
And I was wrong last week. Oh man. Well, one team did their job. We knew Dallas would score over 30, but the Eagles, see what happens when you have turnovers, the number is not going to go over.
That's right. 30-27. So there you go. I have the Eagles. Well, I think the Eagles get back on track, Adam. I think that the Seahawks are going to do what you say, try to pass the ball around. And I think this pass rush, some of the things you heard from Brandon Graham, from Josh Sweat, feels like these guys they need to take matters in their own hands. And I don't think this Seahawks offensive line is as good as any of the last 3 or 4 that the Eagles have been going up against. So I expect the pass rush to come alive. They're going to get some turnovers because of it. They're going to batter around Geno or even if it's Locke, if he has to play, whatever. So I think the Eagles are going to score points against this defense. So the Eagles will win 34-24 and break that long losing streak against the Seattle Seahawks. You know, when you break a streak, usually you do it in style. So I got the Eagles winning by 10 on the road in Seattle.
All right, 2 quick things off of that. Now, if Locke has to start, we'll get more into this. We'll know. We'll obviously have more Monday morning and also Monday night for the pregame show. He's not mobile, big arm, just has accuracy problems. He did a good job against the Niners. He actually kept them in the game, but he's a guy. He's going to be a sitting duck back there. Now, to me, with Geno Smith, if he does start, he has a groin injury. Ordinarily, based on what the Seahawks have done, they come out throwing. That plays into your point, though. If they think he's going to be struggling a little bit to move with that, they may not. They may try to take the ball out of his hands a little bit because they don't want him dropping back as much. That could play into it. So we'll see. But normally, based on what they've done every week, they're going to be aggressive. And that's the way they've done with Geno Smith. He is an unbelievable story that came out of nowhere. It took him 10 years to be a competent NFL quarterback, but good story. Really good.
There you go. All right, we got more for you guys on Monday morning, so stay tuned and keep it posted to Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation.